Okay, great. So we're just coming in and just gonna say hi to everybody in the room. I'm just gonna mute myself briefly. Set ourselves up in the room. Okay, we are in the room. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Facebook Live. Thank you all so much for the messages that you sent after the conversation with Robert the other day, Robert Faulkner-Taylor. It was a great conversation, Rachel. I don't know whether you caught it, but it's on sensory processing sensitivities in dogs.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It was really good, really good. So thank you for that. And also for everybody who's got in touch about how excited they are about tonight. So we've got the wonderful Rachelle Michaud with us tonight. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. It's exciting.
Well, great to see you. Yeah, we've spoken a couple of times now, kind of privately, and they've been really amazing conversations. So I know we're in for a bit of a treat. Say hi as you come in, just so I know there's people here with us. I can see the numbers actually. Oh my God, they're plodding up very well. Excellent. So, attachment. Oh, hi, Linda. Brilliant. Hi, Heather. Oh, hello from Detroit. Hi, Heather. All over the world, you see that. You're live from France, aren't you? So it's a very European thing tonight.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. Oh, yeah, they're all coming in now. This is great. Hi, everybody. Hi, Tricia. Hi, Sophie. Hi, Laura.
Aww.
Great. Nice. Oh, we've got really good numbers coming in. This is exciting. So we're going to talk about attachment and parenting and a lot of different things. Now, we kind of connected really because obviously you found dog-centered care.
Yes.
And you put a couple of really good comments on a post, actually, a very, very informed comment. So I reached out to you and then found out that you are actually a psychologist in your own right, and you're an attachment practitioner, and you've had a lot of experience with co-working with kids and adults, and also you've been on your own journey through your own dog, joining a lot of these dogs.
Yes.
So I thought this would be a really great conversation to have tonight. So before we come on to the kind of nitty-gritty, tell us a little bit about your own story and your own background, Rachel.
Sure. So by my name, I look French. I'm actually American. I just wanted to mention that. And I'm living in France now, but I grew up in America. And some of this is in what I'm going to share with you today, but I am a psychotherapist, and I started out doing a lot of study on infant-parent attachment, and I did a lot of home visits, and then it changed to doing work one-on-one with people and with couples. But I've learned so much about attachment, and I have a supervisor who watches what I do and makes sure what I do is connecting and loving, and so this has just come through me with my dogs. I felt like I couldn't do it any other way. And I just thought that it's interesting for me to share the connections I make between the attachment and my dogs today.
And even, yeah, and we're gonna have a look at that. You very kindly got a little presentation for us. We've got some slides to have a look at while you take us through these things to consider. A couple of things there. One thing that I find interesting when we've talked about, I've shared a lot of things. I take a lot of my interest, a lot of my books actually are on the progressive side of child education and psychology and development.
Yes.
And what that looks like, that and even the name of the group, dog-centered care, is kind of based on child-centered care, which is very much how things are looking at now about the individual child. Yes. And so I've shared a lot of resources myself in here, drawing from, for me, you can easily replace the word child with dog on a lot of stuff. It's interesting how many people say, oh, yeah, they're going on about children again, they're not children, they're dogs, as though there's some difference. And what I really want us to kind of look at today and explore is where we can really make those connections and understand those similarities.
Yes.
And the other thing that's interesting is, we talked about this in one of our private chats, really. I love how your professional interest with humans and your education there and what you do professionally, you were still able to look at your dogs and think, this is the same, isn't it? Because we were talking before how both of us have worked with, or you've spoken to, and I've worked with psychologists, psychotherapists, child counselors who haven't made that connection. And then they're like, oh, so it applies to my dog as well. And that's an interesting point, isn't it?
Yes, it's like this kind of limitation of just thinking a dog is just this kind of shape with not much going on inside, and so it means there has to be an evolution in the person that's looking at the dog to see them differently. Yeah.
And especially when we think about, I know myself from my human psychology education, how much of what we learned around you know, attachment, social pain hypothesis, social processing, kind of social structures that we took from studies on animals, whether it's monkeys or whether it's dogs or whether it's rats.
Yes.
So actually, even those professionals who are working with humans, a lot of their education would have come from animal studies, actually.
Yes. And some of the experiments very, right? Yeah.
Very, I'm
Yes.
afraid. Yeah, and I think
Yes.
it's even more reason why we should bear witness to them because of the suffering that happened, you know,
Yes.
rather than just exclude them and think, well, that was an animal and we're a human. We're a human animal, right?
Yes, exactly. That's right. We are a human animal.
Yeah, and we forget that sometimes, I think,
Yes.
in our ego that
A
we're
lot.
somehow different. I think that's where behavioral science has gone a little bit, you know, because I say when I studied a long time ago, back in the early 90s, when I did my psychology degree, a lot of the stuff we learned about was done in the kind of 50s and 60s. On a lot of it was animal experiments. But our human ego, then, as I say, I think it stopped us saying, well, isn't that wonderful what we've learned from animals and aren't we special? Now I think we're thinking, well, we did kind of learn this from the animals, and maybe a lot of the things that we know around attachment and social safety, especially with dogs, because we've spent a millennia with them to really build that need to be socially safe, and actually to be sociable takes a lot of juice. Actually, takes a lot of things that we have to get right to feel that we can feel safe enough to be that.
Yes.
And so the dogs need a lot of those mechanics as well. So it's just it is interesting, and a lot more people are coming around to it. Great. Is there anything you want to share with us or talk about before we start thinking about some of the slides that you'd like to share with us tonight?
Oh, maybe I'll just share because you just reminded me of it. What's interesting is a lot of this came just kind of personally. So of course, there's part of me wondering, what would scientists say about this? But when I would look up studies, I would see that there are people studying these things that I thought about. So it's a thing. It's not just me making things up, you know. So I think that's really interesting.
Well, it's really true. And I think this is the thing. I think I've talked about this myself, but you know, the dog training community, especially, it was a bit of the Wild West back in the day because people were just kind of making things up, really. And so we needed to turn to science. We have to evidence-based things and have a foundational aspect. But also, I think we can foundate ourselves in that objectivity, but whilst also allowing ourselves to join other dots and almost say, well, I haven't seen the signs that that isn't the truth yet.
Right.
You know, especially about the lived experience that we can all relate to, the need to feel safe, the importance of feeling, you know, as a social species, when I feel in a certain way, I want to feel that I can reach out to my close social network and get support and not feel rejected or ignored.
Exactly. That's so big. Yeah.
And that's a big foundation element of attachment, of course. So we'll come on to that as you take us through. Excellent. Okay, cool. So so do you want to share the slides there? Yeah.
Yes,
okay,
I will. All right, here we go.
Let's see if the tech works. Let's have a look.
Let's have a look. Oh, I have to put it on the play from start. There we go. And here we go. Let's see if you can see. You can see that? Yeah.
Yes, great.
All right, so here's my little personal visual story that's going to take us through some about psychology, some about my dog, some about parenting. So we'll just go from here. So this is about attachment for everyone. Lessons from psychology to help us be better animal caregivers. So,
oh, sorry, can I just say I love that already? I think that's lessons from psychology to help us be better animal caregivers. Sorry, I know I'm butting in already. I'm going to shut up now, but I'll let you get on. But that is what a great title. Right. I'm gonna mute myself. So I can't
that's good. You know what's funny? When I press the next button, I just hear a beep. It doesn't let me do it from, that's one tech thing. How to move my slides while I'm in the share. Oops, skis. Do you know anything about that? I'll come back. Oh, you muted yourself.
Yeah, I mean, so so share your slide screen again. And then I think you have to make sure that you are actually on your slideshow, not on Zoom.
Yes.
So that the slideshow knows that you're asking for the next slide to go along.
So let me go from play from start and then, so I see when I say play from start, it doesn't let me go back into the share screen. So how about I just do this and I go back to the play from start. Does that work?
Yeah,
yes, it does. Yay.
Yeah, it does. And make sure that you're using you're actually not our screen, you know, with me and you on Zoom, but actually your PowerPoint. That's what you press and change. And you can make us a bit smaller if you want.
Yes. Okay,
Great.
but you can see me good, right?
I can see you good.
Okay,
I'm
so
gonna,
here.
I'm gonna mute myself now. So
Okay, good. So here we go again with this nice title that you like. And I just love this image. It's not me and my dog, but it could be. I have a Dalmatian, and I just love right away. It's just sort of, I hope my images can bring some feeling into your heart, because I wanted to start in your heart this idea about attachment, that me and my dog have been through so many difficult things that you'll hear about, and I stick by his side, and I try to think about what he's thinking. I try to understand him, and I feel like this picture demonstrates that for me in a very powerful way. So this little visual story is about these thoughts from a therapist rocking chair. This is things that I've thought about when I'm on my own with my dogs or just in the walk in the woods. And I put experiences from the battlefield, because I've also had, lots of difficult times with children, lots of difficult times with my dogs. So it's kind of a little bit like that. For example, I started out in psychology with a lot of home visits. I was even working for the military, doing new home visit support program, helping people to find other ways it was to reduce maltreatment with families, to reduce physical violence. But of course, there's so much also to give and to enrich with the families around learning, around singing, around development, around love, around helping them have what they need. But and also there's a circle with these children. They're playing. I used to be a music together teacher and teach songs to parents and children. So over the years, I saw thousands and thousands of children and caregivers, and I would start to see like what made it hard for caregivers to be sensitive to their children, what made it hard to try to understand them and to be kind and patient. And I have some ideas about that I'll share with you. And here's a little slide of me as a therapist. I just show it because I'm a different kind of therapist. The kind of therapy I do is very much, I'm not a blank slate. It's very warm. It's very, trying to really lean into the other person and feel them and support them. And it's hard to explain everything that I do, but it's very different from a lot of traditional therapy. And here I am in France. I wanted to put this here because I've lived in different places with my dog, and where I am now, it can be very difficult because I find that the French people might not have access to the same resources we have in English-speaking communities. So sometimes they might not know some of the things that we know or have hands on the research we have. So sometimes I feel misplaced here or judged here, or struggle. Oh, and here's a map of Paris. I'm just outside of Paris, not far from Versailles. So there's lots of nature, thank goodness. But I see things like this all the time in France. There's a lot of dogs off leash. There's a lot of just, I guess, laissez-faire, you could say. And, but also mixed with like very, sort of I'm dominant and you're the dog kind of. I see that a lot in France. I also wanted to mention, this is very special for me, but I want to dedicate my little story presentation to my dog Shadow that I had as a child. I wanted a dog when I was young, like sometimes we all do, but we don't know sometimes how to care for it and take it out to go to the bathroom. And anyway, my parents got divorced, and my dad wanted to keep the dog because he wanted it to be security dog and to bark when people would come up the driveway. And this picture on the right, this is not my dog, but this shows a very mild version of what I saw years later when I came back to my father's house, and the dog had a shorter chain, was in his own poop. He had big, huge bulges on his body, which ended up being cancer. As you can imagine, the physical neglect that he had, the emotional neglect, the loneliness he had. When my father saw the dog as just a sort of working dog and not as an emotional being that needed to be indoors in the winter and not out in the cold. So I'm even just surprised I'm able to talk about this today, because I still feel the trauma of knowing that this dog that I wanted ended up in my dad's hand. And of course, clearly today, if anyone walked by our house and saw this, it would be taken immediately into pet protection agency. But back then it was just, that's what it was. But I want to dedicate it to Shadow because I wish that she had a better life. So the one way, so you mentioned, Andrew, that, dogs are not kids are not dogs. But the one thing that there is in common is that there's a human in both of the equations, and there's a psychology of the human that's dealing with the child or dealing with the dog, and that human has beliefs, that human has a history, that human has perceptions, and that human is what sort of makes a lot of what happens in the interaction. So I have a lot of thinking on that human, and a lot because of my background in psychology, I think a lot about that human. And so I think that's what can sort of make us see the bridge and try to help people with their little ones when we see that that's what's the same. So for example, here there's a child and a dog, and in the back are the parents. So even though they're different species, the child and the dog, there's still somebody, you know, we could say bigger, older, that's trying to guide and to lead, hopefully, these two. So even though they're not the same, there's still that element there. And so, and the comment that I made in the group that you mentioned, Andrew, was that someone mentioned something about, you know, oh, it's so hard when other dog trainers use these methods, and how can I help them understand? And I've had this thought for a while that I just can't help but think that there's going to be an evolution in dog treatment, dog, you know, approaches. There has to be, in the same way that there were with humans and children, that eventually we're going to see that they should have rights, just like adult humans have rights. You know, children have rights. They can't just work in a factory, you know, when they're little, you know, that we have to treat them with respect. We can't hit them, things like that. And I think over time, I've seen the dog world just sort of grow in that. And I just think it's going to keep going in that direction. That's my hope. So for example, this is a picture from 1911. You can see these are just boys in a mine in Pennsylvania. And in French here, it just says that sometimes their fingers in their hands, they would lose them, you know, they would work nonstop throughout the day, paid 8 cents an hour. And, you know, this is how children used to be treated. They didn't have rights, and they were just seen sort of as, you know, in this way. And it's not like that anymore, at least, I guess we could say in most of the West. Here's a photo in 1899 of a sulfur mine in Sicily, where they were treated like slaves, where they're beaten and pinched, that it was customary to burn their calves with lanterns to get them on their feet. If they ran away, they were captured, beaten, sometimes killed. So again, here I'm talking about children, but you can see how a lot of dogs still in many countries are treated very badly like this. And it really breaks my heart. And I just hope that more changes over the years. Here's someone in 1908 just working. Here's pictures. Again, it's sort of fun and funny. This is from I think her name's Sabine Weiss. She's a famous photographer. But, you know, you could think, oh, this is fun what they're doing. But also I'm wondering, is there enough supervision? Is this safe enough? You know, who are they going to go to when there's an accident? You know, what about their feet? So that my attachment sense, or my motherly sense, we could call it, just sort of comes alive when I see this, of wanting to protect them, you know. Here's a child just playing on the chains. She just looks like in poverty. Here's a child on the right that's chained up. You know, children used to be chained up like dogs because, you know, if there was no one to watch them, if the parents had to work, they would be chained up for safety, you know. And I feel like, you know, dogs, it's still happening, and sometimes people decide not to do it anymore. And I just thought that was interesting. She ended that little series of children pictures with a dog. You know, this is something we see all the time, and it's, I guess we could say, quote unquote, normal, but it's interesting. There's some more children, not very clean. You wonder who's caring for them. And then, you know, then there was this whole thing about children are not your property. So these are ways that it started to change in the minds of people about children. But I just like to contrast it with this, you know, can we look at dogs as not our property, as only workers only, where they're just neglected, you know, where like my dog Shadow is just living with a short chain, living in their own poop, you know, it's just, for me, it's just so sad. So I like this little advertisement. Dogs belong on couches, not on chains. Of course, in some countries like France, they don't let them on the beds and stuff like that. But anyways. So in this little part, I just want your, because some of those slides were kind of, I mean, I feel something inside when I look at them. But in this part, just see what happens in your body when you look at these interspecies attachments and friendships, because I'm sure you've seen different species connect with each other and bond with each other, even species that would normally maybe harm each other in the wild or want to eat each other in the wild. But there's these conditions where sometimes they can even bond and you help each other for survival even. Oh, and I thought it'd be good to say a little bit about attachment, just that like a basic of attachment is that when you're in danger, when you need physical, emotional danger or in need, there's someone you go to for safety and protection, kind of like you were saying, Andrew, before, someone that's emotionally known. And Dr. Siegel does a lot on brain stuff. And he talks about it as 3 S's: being seen, soothed, and safe. And being seen is not just seeing with your eyes. And then it's kind of silly, but when I typed in attachment at first in Google, it pops up in French on my computer, and it just says it's like a sentiment of affection of someone or an animal or something, and then they mentioned an attachment for your dog. So they're not using it in quite the same way, but I just thought that was cute that they use that for the dog. So just let your body feel like just look at this, like a little, I always get the names of monkeys and chimps and gorillas all mixed up, but whatever he is, just loving, just being sweet with these little leopards. Here's some kind of, again, monkey animal on a dog. The dog's taking him around. This is a little piglet actually taking milk from the dog. So isn't that interesting? That's a kind of biological hormonal thing that's still getting activated and working, trans-species. Here's an owl and a dog. And a kitten with little ducklings. Like that's like kind of like, wow, it's not eating them. It's kind of amazing, you know? And then, of course, a human, the dog. And the dog there, has kind of a look in its eyes, but I can see that human's really happy there. So I wanted you to meet my dogs, and then I'm going to go into some more psychological stuff. But here's Jax. This is actually a stock photo, but he actually looks almost exactly like that. He's almost 4 years now. And it's a little sad for me that the left box has more than the right box. The left box is what's hard about him, but he has really intense separation anxiety. I can't leave him alone. He has wobbler syndrome, a kind of stenosis in 7 parts in his neck that even with an operation will not get better. He has a short lifespan prognosis. He has a strong reactivity to people and dogs. And in the car, he's very reactive. He has to be muzzled outside. He's food obsessed. And excuse me if in the dog community I'm saying anything. I'm just the dog mommy right now, so I might be saying something that's like a little off, but this is how I see it. He's intensely persistent. He has these moments where his mobility just goes super downhill and he seems almost paralyzed and his paws are all scraped up and he walks on the tops of his paws. His paws have holes in them sometimes. I have a million pairs of dog shoes trying to find what stays on his foot. He probably had his first 4 months of life, I'm imagining, were not very great. I didn't realize when I got him that he was from Czech Republic and probably just, born to be sold kind of thing. And he's very restless, but I love him so much. So I also describe him as very loving, very protective, extremely faithful, very sensitive. And before he got sick, he was really physically powerful and graceful. And there's an intense attachment between he and I. And Lulu's my other dog that I got this about, I got her when she was 2. So whatever that is, 10 months ago. And there she is. She's very playful and social, a lot of puppy behavior. She's good at giving kisses. And she's like a lot of puppies, she seeks proximity and secure base, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And she's very easy compared to Jax. I feel bad saying that, but it's true. She's very likable and cute. She always wants to be close to me or Jax. And the only challenge is she wants to bite Jax's tail and ears, and he doesn't like that at all. So I want to just express a little bit this transformation that happened inside of me when I became a dog mom. Well, one thing I'll say is I always wanted to be a parent of humans, and it didn't happen for me. But I don't think that I just put that all into the dogs. I really think that having the dog also awakened something inside of me, like my attachment system sort of came online. And I noticed things like things that I used to hear parents say. Like once they had a child, they said they couldn't, they became very scared around their child being safe. They had zero tolerance for observing any kind of cruelty to children. And that happened to me around dogs. I couldn't stand, even in a movie, watching a dog die. And it made me want to, I sort of like devoured new ideas and wanting to raise my dog, because I started off by, before I got a dog, I watched a lot of a certain celebrity that's on National Geographic that you probably all know. And I liked him a lot, but I didn't quite understand, you know, what he was doing compared to what I want to do, especially after I had my own dogs. It just felt like that is so wrong. I would never do that. I'm not going to do leash pops and all these things to my dogs. It just felt so wrong. There was this, as I was saying, attachment light bulb that lit up in me to protect, to care for, to soothe, and to ensure the physical and emotional survival of my dog. So you can see the attachment goes both ways. It's in the child and in the dog. The dog has this, they see you as protecting them, as caring for them, but inside of me, that desire just came up. So there's like not even a thought in my mind, if a bus was gonna coming towards my dog, I would probably have this scary instinct to run in front of the bus, because I feel that inside. And there's a thing from psychology called a social engagement system, which comes from polyvagal. And this is another thing, when I was looking at it, there's people that are doing research on this in dogs too. But it's, this is kind of nerdy, but it's like they use mammalians. So that includes, all of us. And just kind of, you can see there's the head, the little squares at the bottom, there's the head turning, there's these things, the facial muscles, there's these things that sort of happen that help the dog/child attune to the parent and vice versa. There's this sort of like lighting up in both that happen deep inside. I'll see if I can show you better in pictures. So for example, my dog Jax, this is him when he's little, he's just so adorable. I have to show this. This is like the first day I got him, and right away, boom, he's like following me. He's looking towards me, kind of like how a duck might, little duck might follow its mommy. It's just right away, I could feel, boom, that I felt my attachment towards him and I felt his towards me. And I put this picture in here and I wrote somatic response because I feel like even just looking at this picture, I don't know if it happens too, but I just feel this feeling come over me. And I think it must be similar to when I'm out with my dogs and people smile at me. It's this like warm feeling, this feeling of like, oh my God, you're so cute. And I just want to focus on you. I want to give you attention. I want to be with you and spend time with you. And I think of that as attachment too. So this focus on him, you can see me, my friend took these pictures when I first got, you can see me looking at him as he's sleeping. We're in this Italian restaurant and he was tired. So I just thought I'm going to hold him. And I didn't care if it was weird or inappropriate. I just did it. And I was, concerned for his safety. And I think another thing about attachment is this like pride. I've seen things on the internet about dog mom pride or parental pride. This is me having pride. And like, look at this. This is this beautiful thing that trusts me, and I can feel my attachment to Jax. This is not us, obviously, but when we're at the vet, I used to hold him in a certain way in front of his chest, and he would just sort of lean on me, and then the doctors could do whatever they needed to do because he could feel me sort of in the front of him, holding him. And at night, he does this thing where he just stares at me, and he only does it usually at night, like when he's about to go to bed. But I can feel this like twinkling of the mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are just, I think I have a slide on it, but it's just, there's something lighting up in both of us, and we can we feel a similar emotional state at the same time. It's like, that's very much coming out of infant human research, but I think it also happens with dogs and humans. And when I smell his paws, I feel again this like, it's probably like even, oxytocin, these hormones come over me of attachment. And when I'm not with him, I know his attachment system's activated because he's insecure. And I also feel worried, so I know that there's an attachment there. I just love these pictures. These are old pictures before I knew he was sick. And I just love that I'm showing delight in him and interest in him and kind of supporting behind him. And it's kind of things that people do with kids all the time. And we don't think about it with dogs, but I think sometimes people might just do it the same way I'm doing it. You just kind of, you're enjoying the moment together. We're looking in the hole, what's in there. And I'm just kind of supporting him from falling and being with him. And I just love that I'm so engaged with him. I just think it's, and here, even though I don't like these pictures of me very much, I wanted to show them because, we're probably looking at a sheep or something. You can just see him curious, wanting to get up where I can see. And here I feel a little bad that he's doing something so kind of risky with his little cone on. He probably should have been resting more, but we used to do stuff like this all the time before I understood that he had mobility issues because they didn't show up right away. I also was going to share when I got the second dog. Oh, and you can see Jackson in the house on the second one. He's looking out the window because I don't remember what I was doing, but this is what he does when I'm gone. He just sits and stares and sometimes howls, which my neighbors hate. But when I got my little dog, Jax is always by my side, and he's sort of what you call Velcro dog. And there were 2 times that he went and ran away in the woods after I got the little dog. And it really made me wonder what he was thinking, what he was feeling. What did it mean that now he has this little sibling? I felt some guilt, like, oh shoot, I might have messed this up. And again, it's all guesses, right? That's what we're doing. We're just guessing, trying to see what it could be, because he had never done that before and it was striking. So it said something to me. But I stopped and paid attention to it. And then I show how Lulu shows her attachment. So here's, like, for example, we were in the south of France in the summer, and you could pretend Lulu's the little brown dog, and the neighbors would come up to the fence, and she would literally make like she would do this secure base thing that I just couldn't help but notice as a psychotherapist. Like, she would go say hi to the neighbors and they would pet her, and then she'd run back to me, and then she'd go back to them and she'd run back to me. She'd go back to them and she'd run back to me. And I never taught her about boundary games or whatever you call it, where they stay on the mat. I never trained her any of that. So I could tell that she was coming back to me for reassurance and then going back out to explore. And that's what they call secure base in infant parent psychotherapy. And I saw that there's people researching that in dogs too. And she also turns away from strangers when she's overwhelmed. She'll be in my arms like this, and then when somebody's too much in her face or too loving, she'll turn towards me and kiss me, and then I know, oh, she's had too much. She's had enough. It's like when a little baby arches their back and they say, oh, this is too much. And of course, she follows me everywhere. So, for example, I saw, like, there's this article here, the importance of the secure base effect for domestic dogs. So, and he talks about Bowlby, who's like king of attachment. So people are studying these things, and there's people implementing it, like Risha Stewart, who just has this little thing: is your dog securely attached? Do they feel safe? Do they go to you when they have comfort? Do they explore? So misses you, but not panicked when you're gone. Well, that's my dog, but so not securely attached, but attached. And etc. And I kind of mentioned, sorry, this is a stock photo, but it looks just like Lulu. But I like this sort of image of kind of like mountain climbing. There's the belayer, and then there's the climber taking risks. It's like, let me try this new scary thing, and let me come back to you. Let me come back and forth, as opposed to stacking things that are too hard, making the dog overwhelmed, and then they feel panicked. So yeah, she would come and go a lot. But I remember when I first got her, she would scream so loud when something was new, and I would pick her up and I would hold her, and she would stop screaming in a matter of, I don't know, 5-10 seconds. And when that would happen, I just felt from my therapist self like, oh, this is that thing. I'm regulating her. I'm picking her up and soothing her. It literally felt like that. It felt like she feels out of control and needs containment. So I'm picking her up, and then she would stop crying. So it really felt like that to me. So here's a little thing on attachment. So again, the secure base and the safe haven are big things for the attachment figure, it's about, and instead of child, I just put dog. So you're facilitating the dog's exploration, that you are emotionally available, physically available, allowing them to explore. And you're responding sensitively in stressful, alarming situations, providing reassurance, providing comfort, protection, and welcoming the dog back for protection. So I found this is a little harder with my dog that's reactive or when a dog is older, but I felt it so strongly as puppies, and I can see it. I think I talk about it later. I can see it, like, for example, if my dog accidentally hits one of those electrical fences and then he just is frozen and shaking, I can feel it then where he's coming back to me and we're waiting for that sensation to go away. So I wanted to put a slide in here about my dog's reactivity. That again is a stock image, but he can look like this sometimes, just so loving, so sweet, so kind. But he literally feels like a crocodile to me when he's reactive. It's like all of us reactive slash he's guarding. I'm not, he's doing something. It's like even though he's handicapped, he can jump up and snap, which is why he has a muzzle. And there are times when I used to feel like I had a loaded gun and I had to figure out what to do about it. So it could be, there were moments it felt intensely terrifying to me, overwhelming, but somehow I knew very quickly that yelling at him would do nothing. It would absolutely do nothing. I just needed to get him out of whatever it was that was upsetting him. And doing that, I had to move a lot. I felt there was this moment I felt like, oh my God, where am I going to live? Because we used to live in Utrecht in the Netherlands, and he was so reactive in the apartment, just even coming outside of the building, that it was extremely stressful for me, that I imagine it was stressful for him. So I thought, let me leave the Netherlands. And for a minute, I thought to go to Sweden because there's so much space there, but there was too much space and I was too lonely. And anyway, we did this whole journey and between countryside and urban areas. And you could see in the top right his little, please give me space, that I think in the UK, those are very well known. They're not known in France, but to try to let people know he needs space. Because some people think, I need to yell at him and, oh, that thing happened again. Click, click, click. Oh, there we go. So for example, it's not a training and yelling doesn't help. Even though sometimes I feel like the lady on the right, I don't know why it's sticking now. Let me move this thing back up. I need to, oh, here we go. And I would write, sometimes I mess up, and I think that's good to acknowledge that. Sometimes I mess up, and I call it single mom syndrome. Sometimes I'm so overwhelmed by trying to manage him. It's exhausting. I have sleepless nights sometimes. And, so there are times when I lose my patience. But one thing I recognize is there's a difference between, not having enough resources like support or someone to help you, and the philosophy. Because if I mess up and say, for example, I'm less gentle with him than I want to be, I know that it's not the philosophy that I have or how I want to be with him. And I try to repair it just like we do with humans. But yeah, I see the difference between that and people who believe it's okay to act that way. So sometimes I feel judged by other people. And again, back to that human, right? There's a human that has a psychology, and they have a way of thinking that says a lot about them. So someone might be judging me, but if I hear what they say, it makes me think about what that person thinks or what that person believes. So someone who says, oh, you need to just yell at him, that, tells me something about what they believe. Or if they say, oh, he's so sad, he has a muzzle on, that tells me something about what they believe. So it took me a long time to have confidence in doing it the way I think's best. So for example, I look like this sometimes with Jax because he can only walk a little bit, and then I put him in the stroller and he loves it. And in the Netherlands, actually, people would say he looked spoiled. They don't say that here, which I like. And it's like, is he being spoiled, or am I helping him? Am I helping him from not being exhausted? And people don't know his whole story, but I actually had a man one time walk by, and I could tell he was American by how he was talking. He said something like, the darn dog's not a baby, lady, or, what's a darn dog like that doing? And I felt a little wave of anger, and then I felt, oh, he doesn't know. He doesn't know. I just put this in here because I probably have 1,000 pictures of Jax. He just loves pillows. And someone might, like my sister, might say, oh, you spoil him. And I say, well, you know, it's almost like a dog with arthritis. He has a lot of pain. He has a lot of discomfort. He likes cushions. And that's okay by me. He's not doing anything wrong. He's not doing anything that bothers me. Here, sometimes they're both in there. It's just, I love it. For example, here, am I coddling her or is she staying warm? Sometimes we're on a walk and I just pop her in my jacket because she's shivering and she's small. And I just put her in there. And again, in France, a lot of people think it's cute and it's sweet, and that's nice about France. But I could imagine some people thinking I coddle her, but you know, she's not doing anything wrong. She's just shivering. There's this idea, and then there's this idea in psychology of the good enough parenting. So again, good enough dog. Instead of milk spilling, I put a little bone. But there's this saying, good enough caregiving, you know, and one thing I think, if times are going to change over the years about dogs, it's like once we start seeing caregivers have guilt of, oh, did I do that right? You know, of course, too much guilt is not good. It's not helpful. But a little bit of guilt is like, okay, they're thinking about their dog. They're wondering if their dog's getting the needs met. And that would make me feel happy. Okay, so here I'm going to share a little bit about the reasons why people do what they do. When I would go to home visits and I would see people do things that were hard to watch, I can put it that way. Yelling, raising their voice, hitting the kid's hand, just doing things like that. These are my thoughts about it. Some people did it from shame. They're embarrassed to see that they don't have control over their kids, fear of losing control. And I think this applies to people with dogs too. When I see dog owners sort of get heavy-handed, they don't have enough resources or support. They might have an old school philosophy, if I can say that. They're afraid to spoil the animal. We say in psychology, ghosts in the nursery, when your past experiences come in and affect you as a parent. But I think it can happen with dog caregivers, that you can sort of be like, well, dogs, you know, my dad didn't treat me this way, or we didn't raise the dog this way. And it's like your psychology that comes into it. Misattunement with a dog, they're not really seeing what's going on. They think the dog should respect them. Maybe the owner feels panicked or angry, or they're afraid. A lot of people want to avoid being permissive, like it's the worst thing in the world. The caregiver themselves might have an attachment style like avoidant, anxious, disorganized, and it's hard for them to have something else with their dog. Or they might see dogs as limited, without emotion, without being able to understand what's going on. So here I am, always trying to figure out what's going on with my dog, but when I was a therapist, always trying to figure out what's going on with the parent when they lose patience. Sometimes there was just too much chaos and they needed help, like reducing the chaos in their house, which happens with dog owners, I'm sure. Repeating how they were raised. They think the child or the dog should know better. They misattribute or they project onto the dog, like, oh, the dog's just being naughty or it's mad at me, you know, things that aren't true. There's a lack of knowledge, lack of a parental or caregiver supervision, and things build up and they intervene too late. I used to see that a lot in home visits, that they would say, oh no, I need to be strict with the kids, but they wouldn't do anything, and it's escalating and it's escalating and it's escalating until it gets out of control. So here are some, I think it's right here. Yeah, here are some thoughts from psychology. So there's this idea we have on mentalization, and in psychology, mentalization is the ability to understand the mental state of oneself or others that underlines overt behavior. Mentalization can be seen as a form of imaginative mental activity that lets us perceive and interpret human behavior or dog behavior in terms of intentional mental states. So I used to look for this all the time in parents, and I am sure that with dog caregivers, it's also, you know, can they try to understand something about the dog's world? That's a skill, and it can be developed. We also, there's a lot of infant child or infant dog delight, you know, this kind of, I see you, oh, you're so wonderful. And the baby lights up, the mama lights up, and it goes back and forth. And I think that can happen between dogs and humans. There's a lot of, what I love about dogs, it's very nonverbal communicate. I mean, there's also, of course, they can understand us and their sign language and all these things, or the buttons that they press on. But there's also this, they're watching us, trying to understand us, and we're watching their body language and trying to understand them. And that's very similar with infants and babies, because infants don't have words. Although it looks different, of course, what babies do, what dogs do. So here's a woman like trying to just connect, eye to eye gazing, that we talk about that a lot. Also in my work with couples, but I know dogs look away and all of that, but there's also, like I said, those moments when my dog looks at me at night. Coordinated communication like this. This to me looks kind of coordinated, like they're sort of, they're having a coordinated kind of experience. And that comes from looking at infants and children. So dog love. The scientists found that dog owners' aroma actually sparked activation in the reward center of their brains, which is called the caudate nucleus, in both humans and dogs. Of all the smells dogs actually prioritize the hint of humans over anything or anyone else, of their humans. And then the next part just talks about similarities in the way dogs and humans process emotion, vocal sounds, people getting excited, angry tones, and I'm sure you all know about that. So I want to do a little bit about the 4 styles of parenting, and I do have my eye on the time. So there's just authoritarian, authoritative, permissive, uninvolved. And, just to look at it a little bit, permissive is the one I said a lot of people are afraid of doing that, where it's like just anything goes, it's just crazy, overindulging. Authoritarian, which is diagonally across, is the strict one, sort of, we could say military-like, kind of my way or the highway. Neglectful is just so absent, indifferent, just not available. And authoritative is, is really trying to, it's what therapists try to help parents go towards, open communication, clear rules, problem solving, respect. So just here's some pictures just to take it in. You can feel the difference sort of in the pictures, like, oh my God, chaos. Oh my God, I'm alone. Oh my God, dad's yelling at me. Oh, mom's listening to me, right? So authoritarian is like about strict obedience, as opposed to authoritative, which is more nurturing, responsive, supportive. There's another permissive. Again, a lot of people are afraid, they feel like they're going to be so weak and the ironic thing is there's a big correlation between physical violence and permissive parenting, like I was saying before, because it's get out of control and then they want to hit them. So this is just about harsh parenting, hitting, aggression, corporal punishment. I just had this thought that it would just be so nice to say, let's just have gentle hands with our dogs, whether it's the way we're showing them, or the way we're touching them, or the way we're holding the lead. Let's be gentle, and let's have laws around how we touch dogs. That would be my dream. It's just power and control. Here, I just wanted to show when it's uninvolved, neglectful. Look, it's like the child is totally alone, raising themselves. I don't even know where the little one's body is. It's like floating in that skirt, that jacket somewhere. But it's just, and I'm sure you've seen dog owners like this. Like they go to the dog park and then they're on their phones and there's just no engagement. There's no interaction. There's no help when there needs to be help. And a lot of people, why did I put this? Oh yeah, there's this thing about gentle parenting, but some people are afraid it's too much, like anything goes, and that's not true. So sometimes we need to help people like distinguish. Oh yeah, here's some more ideas from psychology. What might apply to dogs? Positive attachment. I think I've heard Andrew talk about that, where it's instead of seeing things as like good and bad, it was big in the field of psychology to go from negative reinforcement to positive reinforcement. That was a big shift. And also in the dog world, that's a big shift, from Caesar Milan to like positive. So even though there's still more that we've grown from that was a big shift. So in the work I do, there's a lot of, for attachment, with the humans, there's a lot of existing in mind and heart. It's this idea that you exist in my mind and in my heart, even when you're not with me. And I really think we can take that to the dogs, to our animals, that, that you're in my mind, you're in my heart. I think about you, I feel you, and you can feel that. there's this, I had to do a lot of speaking for the baby when I worked with parents, like, oh, it looks like she's saying now, I'm hungry, or it looks like she's saying, I'm hot, to help the parents. And I think that's a lot what dog trainers do, or dog coaches, dog behavior, all the doggy people do with dog caregivers, try to help them understand. About co-regulation, why it's important. Co-regulation is where one nervous system calms another. It happens when you have a caregiver who's attuned to you as a puppy. They can use their body, their tone, and pitch of voice and breath to help you calm down. So that's like what I was saying. It's easier for me to feel that with the puppies, but I also can imagine when I take my dog out of a stressful situation, I'm also helping him to downregulate. I'm helping him to downregulate his arousal. Yeah, and this is a little slide just on co-regulation is in the middle, when someone can help you regulate, when you can't do it all on your own. So it made me think also about defense mechanisms, because I do a lot of work with helping my clients when they have defense mechanisms, and here's some common ones with humans: regression, repression, sublimation, displacement. But I think that it must apply to dogs, because when my dog is fear aggressive, that's the defense mechanism he has to try to solve the problem. Here's another idea from psychology, like, don't cry it out. There's a movement in parenting, just let the baby cry it out. And a lot of people are like, oh my God, don't do that. You can pick it up, soothe it, put it back down. If it cries again, pick it up again. There's all these other ways you can do it. And I think it's similar that, when I first got Jax, my a therapist actually said to me, oh, just put him downstairs and let him cry it out, and that's the best way. Even my vet said that to me, and it just felt so wrong. So I had to ask the dog people, and they said, no, we don't believe in that. You don't have to do that. Facial referencing is an idea from psychology. Is it safe, mommy? Is it safe out there in the world? Are you scared, mommy? Does your face look scared? So that's another idea I have a big question mark on. I think I saw some stuff about there with dogs, like there's times where I've seen my dog look at me if there's a strange human, a new human he doesn't know, or if I make a scared sound, he'll look at me. And I feel like it must be some kind of echo of facial referencing, like, is it safe, mommy? Turning towards, turning away, overstimulation. I didn't realize this was so long on my stuff. But helping a caregiver to recognize, when is the child overstimulated? When is the dog overstimulated? And I love this graphic also by Grisha Stewart about the green zone, blue zone, yellow zone, orange zone, red zone. Just you can't expect dogs to be able to function in the red zone. I like this stuff because I've read about how dogs can be seen, just like humans have different attachments: anxious, avoidant, disorganized. I'm guessing they, and sometimes they take the caregiver's attachment, and I think I have a little bit of an anxious attachment, but I think Jax would have also had an anxious attachment, whether he was with another caregiver. Oh, and I love this. This is one of my biggest tools I used in my home visits. Parents would say, oh, he just needs to learn. He just needs to not run in the road, so I spank him. Or, oh, he should be able to behave himself in a candy store. And it's like, how do you think a child can behave themselves in a candy store? It's like one time I brought Jax into a pet store, and all the bird food was on the floor, and he just lunged at it. And the pet store owner came over to me, and she grabbed the leash and she said, no. And she was like, you need to be harsh with him. And I didn't say it at the time because I was just too overwhelmed and still new in myself as a dog mom. But inside I said, no, he just needs to not come in the pet store. It's too much. So a lot of what I do is taking him out of a situation, and his emotions pass so quickly. When the scary threat is gone, he doesn't look like this. And this comes from psychology. I'm almost done, by the way. This comes from psychology, titrating when something is too intense. So you have to sort of scale up like a ladder. You're like meeting dogs or people where they're at, and you don't just throw them in the hard thing. You sort of, pendulate, help them do step by step, going back down when it's too scary. I talk a lot in the therapy I do about unbearable states of loneliness, because that's a kind of trauma. So I notice for example, when my dog gets electrocuted on the fence, he sort of goes into this traumatic reaction, and I have to bring him out of that sort of aloneness, for example. Here's the thing about trauma, taking from psychology. Trauma can be seen as there's too much too fast, which I see with my dog all the time. Too much stimulation, too many people walking around, or there's too little too late. Oh, I needed help and you weren't there. Oh, I was hungry and I had to wait too long. You know, that's a way that someone can have traumas. There's too much happening too fast or too little too late. And so I put at the bottom, is it also happening now? Because you could be preventing that from your dog's life. So here's the last little part. So dogs follow us. That's a sign of attachment. You know, they just follow us everywhere. They want to be with us. Dogs try hard to understand us. They watch us. They learn what we do and say and what it means. We should do the same for them. This comes from this circle of security. Always be bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind. Whenever possible, follow my dog's need. Whenever necessary, take charge. That was really what I used with parents, and I think it applies with dogs. So you don't want to be mean. You want to be wise, strong, but you don't want to no, wise, but you don't want to be weak. You want to be strong, something like that. Your dog isn't giving you a hard time. They're having a hard time. And then it's funny, I came across, there's other people doing little podcasts on early dog and human attachment research. And I thought, oh my God, I didn't watch it, but I thought, oh, that's funny. Oh, and that's the end. Sorry, that's the end. There it is.
Do you know what? That was amazing. So a few things I want to share. What I loved about this tonight, this is what was so special, because it's really nice to have somebody who isn't a dog training professional.
I'm not.
Just think, you know, all these things I think about, all these parenting styles, all the things I do in my own way, being a dog mom and somebody who understands things, where can I see some connections in a very kind of informed way?
Yeah.
And I think that makes it really special, because some of these things I know that if they'd have been delivered by a dog trainer,
yes,
type, we would have references to reinforcement, and this would happen and that would happen, and it would be very kind of arbitrary in the moment, rather than I love these notions, and I think it was really worth sharing the story a little bit about children's change, this kind of evolution of compassion and connection that isn't just for children, right? I think as a society, a lot of this is to do with power struggles, I think.
exactly.
And power imbalances, but the misrepresentation of women in society for a long time, and how hard fought that was to try and get some kind of equality, and also to kind of free women from the kind of shackles of the judgments of men about how they should or shouldn't behave, and what who they are and what their needs are.
Yeah.
We've seen the same thing happen with children over time.
That's right.
And it does have to be a societal shift. And like you say, I'm hopeful now, listening to this evolutionary thing, that we can shift that with dogs as well. I think it's that misrepresentation, isn't it, of who dogs are and what they need, and how much of that narrative has been put on them through a human ego.
That's right.
I think that's really powerful. I love a lot of reference here to this notion of us being the dog's return to safety, because that's really powerful. And this is one thing we've got to bear in mind when we think about that good bad continuum. And I would really invite trainers, especially positive trainers, to reconsider sharing things like reward the good, ignore the bad, because what are we ignoring then sometimes, especially for that dog seeking that attachment and that connection?
Yes, that's right.
This has been really brilliant. There's lots of other things I wanted to kind of talk about here a little bit. Do you think that there's an element then, when you think back to when you're working with parents and the children, this is a little bit of a shoot off, really, because I know a lot of us who turn up, we want to support the caregiver, but we really see the plight of the dog.
Yes.
and it affects you as a
Yes.
professional. You must have experienced something very similar as a professional, going in to support these families,
Yes.
seeing maybe a dysfunctional household, maybe seeing children. I know obviously if there's any notion of severe abuse and welfare, then that would be passed on to the right agencies. But generally, you must have gone into seeing situations where the children were really struggling to feel heard and to feel seen
Yes.
and to have a connection. How did you cope with that? What was your way of dealing with that?
I think what are those called? The little Russian dolls. I kind of see it like the parent of that child also had a story, and it might have even been worse. And then and it's kind of like this intergenerational that came down. So I had to have a lot of compassion for the one that was behaving in that way, because when I would get to know them, I would know that they would have a story too. Yeah, that's how I would deal with it.
And that's that compassion, isn't it? I think it's not being permissive or condoning. It's just turning up anyway on that situation. And actually, there are so many things that resonate for me about how I work and try and educate others about how we work with caregivers, dog guardians. Because actually, you have to bear witness to that parent story too. You have to
Yes,
understand their attachment
absolutely.
styles, their parenting styles, what it is that's happening there, and what it is that's often stopping them at finding those connections.
Oh, yes. If I went to someone as a dog mommy and I didn't feel, if I felt judged, that would be very harmful and hurtful, and I wouldn't be able to make progress. Yeah, it's very important.
That is really important and a powerful
Yeah.
point, because I think our own judgments, our own belief systems, our own value systems often, we can start conversations by, oh, do you know, that tool you've used is really cruel, and I'm not going to work with you unless you get rid of it. And a lot of these conversations often happen, but what does that say to that person who themselves are kind of victim to insecure attachments, feeling judged, the anger that they feel, the frustration that they feel, the seeking
That's
of
right.
control over another because of the sense of lack of control for self?
Yes, instead of just saying, what was happening right there? I heard the way you spoke to the dog, what was going on
Yeah.
inside of you,
Uh, I like how a lot of the slides as you built through, you had the human version and then your perception of the dog version. And this is very much your story, and this is why I think it's been really valuable tonight. Because I say you're not a dog professional in that sense, but you've seen the dots. And it's interesting, isn't it, how people's perceptions, this notion of, are you spoiling the dog or are you giving them relief? How often people fear doing something that is actually supportive because in their mind they
Yes,
perceive, I'm going to spoil my dog, you know.
that's right. Yes, and then they'll get worse. That's the fear. They'll slide into this little princess or something, princess animal. Yeah.
And I think we as dog trainers and our almost obsession with operant training at one, as part of our evolution is a little bit to blame here, because, or not to blame, but it's contributory, because I've got a friend of mine whose dog sadly passed away quite suddenly, and the other dog of the house was struggling. And so in the night, the dog would start howling and crying. So anyway, my friend got in touch and said, I really want to go and comfort her, but I've been told before that means then if she comes up to my bedroom, she want to come up to my bedroom forever because I'm reinforcing her and that kind of thing. And I said, so I encouraged her, just do whatever the dog feels that the dog needs,
Oh, yeah.
which she did actually. And it took a week or so, but now the dog's back to just doing its own thing, sleeping downstairs and having, because that dog was grieving too, you see, and it was obviously waking
Yes.
up and missing its friend, perhaps, who
Oh,
knows. But I think we keep drumming home this notion of behaviors that are reinforced and repeated and all this kind of thing, rather than actually thinking about the intrinsic need that drives a
yes.
lot of them. And once that need has been supported, especially when a dog gets older, oh my God, Molly, when she was younger, she talk about a Velcro dog. She really did have that kind of attachment with us. She was everywhere. But now she isn't, because she's older, she's confident,
Yeah.
and we've provided her with that return to safety. She knows it's there, but she can do her own thing.
I love that. Yeah, and when people say the dog is spoiled, then again, I also feel sad for them, because I could imagine that they weren't spoiled when they were a child, that person, and that's kind of.
Now that's a really interesting point as well, because there is an element of the normalization of things that happen in society.
Mhm.
So, you know, I share a little bit about my own story and getting the cane when I was a kid. And
Yeah.
it's amazing, my friends, any friends who are under 30, under 40 maybe, they're like, what's the cane? And I say, well, they had a stick and they whacked me. And in fact,
Oh
they didn't
yeah.
just whack me, I had to take my trousers down so they could get my bum, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yes, we did used to hit kids
Yes.
with sticks
Yes.
within our lifetime, which younger people
Yeah.
will find, oh God, that's terrible. But again, just like you said earlier about this thing about discipline, a number of people here say, well, I had the cane, I had corporal punishment, it never did me any harm.
Oh
That
yes.
is the harm speaking right there.
Yes, it
Because it's
is.
normalized pain, and this is what this is why I'm so
That's right.
passionate about getting rid of shock collars and legalizing against them. Because
Hmm.
a lot of the professionals who advocate these tools, they are lying and I put a post in those today, lying and gaslighting actually the general public by
Mm.
misfeeding them, misrepresenting to them what dogs are, what they're doing. And as long as we have this tool, you know, people get sucked into this, and you get comments like, "Yes, well, I used one of them and it saved my dog's life," because they've been convinced that it has done, and it normalizes pain. It
Yes.
normalizes the infliction of deliberate pain on another living being, and we have moved on from that a little bit with kids, because society has. We've woken
Yes.
up,
And
I think, to
laws.
children's
Yeah.
needs.
Hmm.
Mm.
And it makes me wonder, could that owner have saved the dog's life a different way by like having, I don't know, by having a fence or having some other kind of barrier, whatever it was that they were in risk of, you know. This is supervision part, you know. Yeah.
And I think many of us, myself included, actually, have experienced the fallout from insecure attachments. You know, I think
Hmm.
about my own parents who were the most loving parents. I had that.
That's
They
good.
spoiled me. They gave me everything I wanted. So I had that. And actually, it was only when I had my own breakdown, actually, and going through therapy and looking back,
Mm.
that I realized part of the problem was I didn't have what I really wanted, which was more of them, because they worked so hard, because they were high flyers.
Yes.
They were away a lot. I had to have nannies or family members that looked after me, and I think they
Absolutely.
overcompensated for that by spoiling me with stuff. You know,
Mm.
as a kid, you're like, stuff, yeah, stuff. Oh God, I think back to those Christmases. I'd come down at Christmas and the lounge would be literally filled with presents.
Mm.
It sounds really bad, but I could probably only list half a dozen presents from my childhood that I remember. So actually, they weren't that valuable. That
Yeah.
the moment was. So I
Yeah.
think this is the key that we have to think about, that when we support caregivers, they are likely to have their own challenges around
Absolutely.
making safe connections.
Oh, yes. Yes, absolutely. And a lot of people haven't gone to therapy, you know. So, yeah, well, I just feel what you say because I could imagine, you know, children, they might not think about it, but they want to be seen and heard and felt and skin and, you know, all that stuff. Yeah, that lights up our brains and makes them grow.
It does, and that co-regulation is so important. And I think that's the process that we start on with our clients, is how we can help them to support their dogs'
Yes.
care and support needs and build that dog up, so that titration thing is really important. That's what obviously we
Yeah.
do, especially on our side of the fence, gradually building that up so the dog's like, the dog almost says, I think I can take it from here. I think I can manage that, you know, I think I'm okay. But the I was going to say something there, I can't remember what it was now. Anyway, it doesn't matter, but it'll come to me. But okay, well, we've gone a little bit over, but I think it was worth having just a little kind of summary at the end, because it's been a
Yeah.
really powerful conversation,
Yes.
Rachel. Rachel Leather has done a really good chat in the group about unpacking all the different attachment styles. So if anybody wants to dig into
Oh,
attachments
cool.
specifically,
Yeah.
then check out Rachel Leather's chat. Well, thank you so much for tonight. I really
Yes, thank
appreciate it.
you. Me too. That's wonderful.
And just as a dog pro, there's nothing you said tonight that I haven't really thought yes about.
Oh,
Uh, so I think hopefully it's validating on both sides. For us dog pros to hear somebody who's an attachment expert join these dots and say, yeah, you know, we can
good
legitimately
track.
do these things with dogs and puppies.
Yes.
And also hopefully it's validating for you that you've presented to a room with many dog pros in it, and that we can validate your thoughts on it. So,
Oh, that just poof. That's a big one. That's a big one right there.
Some amazing comments in the chat as well. So
Oh,
well,
good.
thank you everybody, and yeah, thank you, Rachel. Thank you so much for tonight.
Thank you.
Bye everybody. Have a good evening. Look after yourselves and look out for the next events that are coming up in the group. All right, and yeah, take care everybody. Bye.